So while I may agree that we have a similar belief system and that, we have similar values, I wouldn't consider myself to be one with a community unless I had a way to interact with people. And that is something that's very important.
You're listening to Podcasting for Experts, with honest conversations about using podcasting as a tool to grow your reach, increase your audience, make a positive impact on the world, and most importantly, to get paid for your efforts. I'm your host, Jess, and we are Pristine Podcasts. Let's talk podcasting.
Hey, and welcome back to Season 3, Episode 9. I'm Jess, co-founder at Pristine Podcasts, and in today's episode, we are talking about creating a community for your loyal podcast listeners. Why is this going to help you in your business, and how do you actually do that? Now, the important thing about running a community is what actually makes a community in the first place. So a community really needs to have something that it aligns to, something that binds them together. So if we look at the definition of what a community actually is, a community is a social unit, so a group of living things with a commonality such as norms, religion, values, customs, or identity. So communities may share a sense of place situated in a given geographical area, like a country or a village or a town or a neighborhood, or in a virtual space through any kind of communication platform. So the best thing that you can do when it comes to getting started with building your own little community is to spend an awful lot of time on defining who your people actually are, what they believe in, what kind of actions they do take, what kind of actions they don't take, which things draw them in, which things repel them. And what a community really needs at its core is a manifesto of things that they believe in. And it is exactly the same for your podcast community. It is basically the glue that holds everyone together, and it's the standard that you set for this group of people. It's the expectations of behavior that you have for people that are part of this community. Interestingly, Kaylin Poland from Lady Boss talked about this, I don't know, it might be like 3 years ago now at Funnel Hacking Live. And she made some really interesting points on what connects your community and how to write that manifesto for your community. And I think someone is actually selling the notes to the talks from that Funnel Hacking Live on the internet somewhere. So I'm going to see if I can still find it. If I can, I will link it up in the show notes. If not, then I think I have the notes somewhere. I might check, what were the main pointers for, writing a manifesto, and I'll, type them up in the show notes. Once you are clear on what makes your people, what it is that you believe in, what values you have, what kind of person you are, or what kind of person you're all striving to become, then you can move on to point number 2, which is to actually create that shared place where people can connect. To me, a community doesn't exist when there isn't a way for members to hold conversations independently of the facilitator of the group, right? I don't cultivate a sense of community with people who I've never spoken to. So there are people whose podcasts I listen to very religiously, but they don't have a community, and I don't consider myself part of their group of people, mainly because I am not within a community space with people who share similar values, with whom I regularly have conversations. I mostly just sit there and listen to the host. So while I may agree that we have a similar belief system and that, we have similar values, I wouldn't consider myself to be one with a community unless I had a way to interact with people. And that is something that's very important. Now, you have a million bazillion options when it comes to platforms to create online communities. You can go the old Facebook route. You can use Circle, which is particularly practical when you also offer, additional info products of sorts because they can access them via Circle as well. You can use Mighty Networks. You could create a subreddit. You could create a community on Vibely. You could set up a Discord server. Like, there are so many options. It really just depends who your audience is and what type of platforms they already know and use. I read a really interesting book recently, which is called Go It Alone. It's about, building a one-person business kind of thing. And one of the points that he made very clearly was that people often don't need a complete reinvention of something, and they often don't want that. They often just want an improvement to something that they already know, like, and trust. So if people are already on Facebook, like if your people are actually still actively interacting on Facebook, then that's great. You can add to their already existing experience that they have every single day by adding your group there, which now brings them more interesting conversations, more recognition, more value, more all sorts of things. If you're going to try and reinvent the wheel to bring all your people who love interacting in Facebook groups to Circle, and they don't have a reason to log in there other than to access their community, a lot of them will not initially get into the habit of actually going into the community often enough to experience the community spirit often enough to then actually remember to keep going into your community in future. So they'll log in once, twice, then they'll forget for 2 weeks and they go, oh, there's this amazing group. I should go log in. Oh, shoot, I've lost my password. I can't be bothered. So I know we always want to give them the better experience, but we have to work with the people that we do have. So it could be that a huge part of your audience are Reddit users. Why not create a subreddit? They're on Reddit every day already. They'll get your notifications if there's interesting stuff going on. So why not go in there? You see? So sometimes it's easier to just work with the people instead of trying to completely re-educate them. Something that you want to consider when it comes to setting up and naming your community is that, of course, having your podcast name in it is one thing. But if you're on a platform where the communities are searchable and they're not private in any way, then what you're going to want is you also want to include keywords in the title of your group so that when people type, let's say your podcast is called, let's think of something really stupid, the Designing Damsels, it's for who, So if you're creating a group and if you just call it the Designing Damsels community, which is actually for, I don't know, female freelance graphic designers who also do something specific, I don't know what, then it makes sense to write behind it a community for female freelance graphic designers. Because when I, as a female freelance graphic designer, use Facebook, I might go to the search and look for communities by going to freelance graphic design, and then your group will show up. And that's how people can find your group and then discover your podcast through your actual community. So if you don't leverage keywords that people are actually actively searching for, you're missing out on people that could potentially come and join your community and then as a consequence discover your show. If you are running your community on Facebook, you're also going to want to set up the join questions. You want to make sure that you ask for people's email address because, again, you can solve multiple problems here. You can also start building an email list at the same time as you're growing your community, and you're going to want to do that from day one. Okay, the next thing that you want to do once you have all these things set up, so you have your manifesto, you know who is for your group and who really shouldn't be in your group and how you behave and whatever. You have your group set up, you have your space, you have your name, you've got everything operational and you know how it fits within your podcast, within your business as a whole, etc. Then you're going to want to start inviting your audience. Now, whenever you ask people to take action on something, you have to remember that they need a really, really, really good reason for why they should be joining your group. So make sure you communicate that value very early on. Like, come into my group for what? People have probably been in Facebook groups for the past 1, 2, 3 years. And in the last year in particular, I know people have gotten very tired of that because lots of the group were just, I don't know, spammy, promo kind of posts, like one slimy look at me thing after another. So lots of people left lots of groups. So why is your one different? What am I actually going to get if I join? So make sure that you have a very clear value proposition for the people that you want to invite, and then start telling people about it. Post about it on social media, add it to your newest podcast episodes as a call to action. You can use dynamic insertion to add call to actions to all of your past episodes right at the beginning or at the end if you only want to invite people who really regularly listen through to the end. You can literally shout about it from pretty much every platform that you have to try and get people to join your community. Now, getting people to join is realistically just one half of the get started with having a community thing. The second half really is engagement. So I've already mentioned, if you have your community on a platform where your audience isn't normally hanging out, you do need their email address. You need to be emailing them. You need to be encouraging them to come back to the community. You need to do something that requires people to log in to that platform very regularly if they want to access the goodness that you offer there, okay? And it could be like, hey, I'm doing a live stream on this day at this time. You can get the link from inside our community. Here's where you go to get that, and then link people back there, and then send another email and be like, hey, whoa, amazing conversations that we had this week in the community. A, B, C, D happened. Click here, click here, click here to go read them and join the conversation. And you're going to have to keep prompting people, I don't know, multiple times a week potentially about continuing to engage with the platform that you have set up. If you do have your community on Facebook and people get notifications, well, they will only get the notifications if they're actually actively participating in your community. So it is very important also on Facebook that you welcome people into the group when you have them join, that you encourage them to post something straight away, that you tag people on posts when you've posted something new and interesting, and you ask people to respond back, and you ask them for feedback, and you go live. You do whatever it takes to keep bringing people back to the group and make them interact so that you will continue to show in their notifications. Otherwise, if they join the group, they never interact, they won't see any notifications. You can post as much as you want. You're talking to yourself at that point. So you want to do whatever it takes to get people involved in that community. And it can be useful to have a helper in place to help with membership requests, deleting spam and things like that. But you could host remote events. You could have, lots of polls going on, asking for people's opinion. Polls are very low effort because people just have to click an option. You can ask very simple questions that can be answered with less than 3 words. You can do things like, hey, reply with a heart if you agree with this. You could do things like that. Of course, not all the time, but staggered in between the valuable posts that you're giving. Have some posts that are just purely designed to get people to have a fast way to engage with you. Of course, you want to share your thoughts. You want to share behind the scenes stuff that they wouldn't be able to get if they weren't in the group. So if they're really true fans and you are sharing, funny blooper videos or things like that, they wouldn't be able to see those anywhere else. So you have some stuff that is really exclusive to your community. Share what your plans are, be vulnerable when things aren't working out so that people really feel that they have a genuine connection with you. And then try and get to know your members, on a one-to-one level, particularly in the beginning when the group is small, because then you can say, hey, Mary, didn't you say you are also a copywriter? Why don't you talk to Chris, who's just joined us over here, and you guys could connect and have a chat about this? Encourage your members to start communicating with each other without needing to be prompted by you. Make sure that you create that safe space where people feel like they can ask questions, they can share their thoughts and challenges. And of course, make sure that you're stating your commitment to being inclusive to everyone if that is part of your manifesto for your group. And this is something that you're really highlighting, because it is easy to assume that people know that they're welcome in your community, but if you don't actively say it, there's always that little speck of doubt. So do tell people that they are welcome, regardless of whatever their gender, their sexual orientation, their race, their current location. I've seen just so many groups who are just super vague on who they are realistically for. So if you are openly stating that, everyone is welcome in this group and this is how we behave around here, and that's part of your manifesto, then you want to actively state that, and you want to get to know your members so that you understand how they feel within your community. And if you encourage those conversations with you and those conversations with each other, then you're kind of going full circle with having the community start to buzz on its own. Of course, support this community whenever you can so that it really becomes people's, most favorite place to go on the internet, because they know that they're welcome, because they feel seen, because they know that they can be themselves without being judged. And that is what makes a community. That is what brings people together. And then number 5, the next thing you're going to want to do is this. You're going to want to feed the community discussions back into the podcast. So once people are actually engaging, you want to bring the feedback and the discussions that happen in the community to the show. And you can even dedicate entire episodes to discussion topics that have really taken off, or questions that have come up time and time again. So that's a great way for you to show people that you are listening to what they're saying and that you are picking up on those things, and that their opinions have a very valid place on your show. And that is what makes the whole glue stronger, right? So do feature prominent topics, prominent discussions from your community on the podcast, and then have, again, a follow-up call to action. If people want to talk about these things, come to the community, so there's like this back and forth feedback loop now, where stuff comes from the community to the show, people come from the show back to the community, and it keeps, like a seesaw going up and down, it keeps spiraling like that, but it keeps growing. Then something that comes up a lot, is there a best time to start a community? I think there's definitely a wrong time to start a community, and that is right at the beginning of your show, mainly because you just don't have enough committed, loyal listeners who actually care about you and the mission that you are on enough to really want to be interacting with you just yet. They've often just found you in problem-solving mode, and they're not in a place yet where they're wanting to interact and to commit at this level. They haven't got this vested interest in you yet. So if you start a community at that point, you're going to just be talking to yourself. It's going to be a drain on your resources. It's going to be very frustrating, and you're not going to have a lot of fun with it. So I don't recommend that at all. So focus on making your show, focus on getting regular, focus on building up an audience, focus on having people actually reach out to you to ask questions and to want to volunteer to start conversations with you. And then you can say, hey, I don't really have a good way to answer this. Maybe you could, maybe I could share this in a community. Why don't you come and join? And then you can ask other people to join as well. So it's going to be way better once you have gotten into a flow, once you have, some more brain space to really make this happen. Another question that comes up a lot is, should I make this community a paid community so that I can earn some money from it? You can do that, but in line with the previous point of, is there a good time to start a community? You're going to be months and potentially even years into your podcasting journey before you have amassed enough of an audience where even 100 people will join your community and have actual conversations that are not started by you. A Facebook group often needs 200-300 regular members before 3 people will talk to each other. So if you have only ever had like 5 downloads per episode and you're still there at like 1 year, 2 years in, there's still not a good time to start a community, never mind trying to make it paid. When I pay for something, I wouldn't want to pay for something and then join a group and then have there be no conversations whatsoever. So of course, if you have a large audience that you've built up and you are actually going to be offering regular, valuable things, and the community has these really juicy conversations all the time that they're so good that you could charge for it, make it paid. You can even convert a free group, as much as you will hack off people at some point, but you can convert a free group to a paid group further down the line. People just don't really vibe with it, But yeah, I don't really enjoy making just the group aspect of it paid. Like, I would always want to provide something of value from myself that I can control and that I can make sure comes out every single month, rather than charging people to just be in a group, which technically, I don't know what it's like now with the terms and conditions, but in the past, Facebook didn't allow you to just charge for a group. But I know they've introduced some monetization features, so maybe their terms and conditions have changed now further down the line. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend this unless you have a sizable audience that is, happy to pay to be part of your crew. Alrighty, so that's it from me for this episode on getting started with building your community. If you've got questions that haven't been answered, well, then why don't you join our community on Facebook? You can ask all of your questions, and maybe those questions will even turn into their very own episode. Or maybe we'll do some case studies, some Q&As in future if you're up for that and you're interested in it. As always, I hope you have an amazing day, and I will see you for the next one.
That's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate you. If you are looking for a community where you can brainstorm with like-minded podcasters and business owners, then don't forget to check out our Facebook group. You can find it at pristinepodcast.com/group. The link is also in the show notes.